che situazione? Eccolo, possiamo funzionare, perfetto. Allora di nuovo
I'd like to welcome you in a warm way on behalf of the Magna Grecia Foundation in this very important moment, in this high moment that sees our foundation in the forefront on these issues. We are presenting our yearly report on cybercrime, but given all the distinguished members of our audience, we will have an opportunity to focus on all the issues connected to organized crime over the past few years. And we have new figures and new targets to base our reflections on. It is a very important moment for our foundation because it's the celebration of our 40th anniversary. So please, a big applause for the foundation. And we want to thank the foundation for everything that has been done so far. Many issues to be discussed then, so many speakers. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'd like to give the floor to Gianluca Greco, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Italy to the United Nations. You have the floor, Mr. Greco. Thank you. Thank you very much. The Honorable Foti, Honorable Romano.
Colosimo, Judge Gayarsa, Deputy Under Secretary Clark, Mr. Nicaso, Excellencies, dear colleagues, I'm honored to open today's meeting. The topic we address is particularly urgent, so much so that it was recently brought front at the center of the Security Council's open debate. And in affirming our commitment to fighting this heinous crime, I wish to echo the sentiments expressed on that same occasion by the Secretary General, and I quote, "Transnational organized crime is a vicious threat to peace, security and sustainable development, wherever it operates. And it operates everywhere, in all countries, rich and poor, north and south, developed and developing. The pervasive use of the internet and information technology are ushered us in the digital age. Information technology has become an indispensable means to the exchange of information, access large databases, and a pivotal prerequisite for the development and the functioning of the economy and finance, as well as for public institutions. Against this backdrop, digital crimes represented the downside of technological advancement. Intensified action of prevention and contrast of illicit activities carried out on the web or reliant on the use of information technology is imperative, while dealing with the virtual domain, where crimes still connected with the real world are perpetrated with consequences also for economy and finance. Evidence abounds on the incredible increase over the past years of illicit activities enabled by technological advancement. Furthermore, the growing nexus between transnational organized crime and terrorism has generated new global concerns. In control of national territories, terrorist groups run criminal economies in conjunction with highly organized transnational organized crime syndicates. At the international level, the United Nations Security Council has recognized and expressed concern about the interlinkage between terrorism and TOC in several of its resolutions, the more recent being Resolution 2462. Apart from the TOC activities, terrorists continue to have access to other sources of finances and logistics. Most of these sources are noted to be outside the formal financial system, and the use of virtual currencies such as cryptocurrencies is becoming increasingly alarming. At the 2019 United Nations Internet Governance Forum, several world leaders stressed the necessity to talk about the values of Internet governance, highlighting the need to agree on how to protect human rights, democracy, and the rule of law in the digital age, how to strengthen equal participation and security of the web. While there is no specific UN Sustainable Development Goal to address cybercrime, the latter can be seen as an obstacle to achieving a number of targets. One of them is SDG 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions, and its sub-goals, which relate to violence and other forms of crime, such as corruption and arms trafficking. This is why, in 2019, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution on countering the use of information and communication technologies for criminal purposes, which introduced an ad hoc committee. The committee was announced to elaborate a comprehensive international convention with the aim of creating a new international treaty on cybercrime. If adopted by the UN General Assembly, it would be the first binding UN instrument on a cyber issue. The treaty could become an important global legal framework for international cooperation on preventing and investigating cybercrime and prosecuting cybercriminals. Moreover, this convention could also complement existing treaties on transnational organized crime and corruption, since offenses covered by other instruments are greatly facilitated and aggravated by the development and expansion of the use of new technologies. Lastly, the Convention could help build the capacity of countries with less experience in tackling cybercrime and provide the basis for technical assistance. At the same time, the Convention must foresee sufficient human rights safeguards, of course, in order to avoid the risks of potentially undermining the right to privacy and other fundamental rights. After 6 negotiation sessions, the new Convention is now expected to be finally within reach, with a reconvened and conclusive session to be held in July. Progress achieved so far show the willingness of each member state to bridge the gaps and increase the likelihood of achieving consensus at the end of the process. In conclusion, I would like to mention that Italy, just a couple of weeks ago, submitted for approval of the General Assembly the resolution on International Day for the Prevention and Fight Against All Forms of Transnational Organized Crime. Approved by consensus, it serves as an important platform to raise awareness and promote coordinated efforts to combat transnational organized crime. 15 November has been decided as the date for the International Day, in line with the adoption of the Palermo Convention by the General Assembly. This symbolic date reminds us of our collective commitment to uphold the principles enshrined in the Convention. The International Day is also a solemn occasion to pay tribute to the victims of transnational organized crime, including the brave public servants who have dedicated their lives to fighting it. Their sacrifices must not go unnoticed, and this day provides an opportunity to pay tribute to their unwavering commitment and bravery. I thank you.
A Gianluca Greco, un altro argomento importante come quello della tutela.
Another important topic, like the one of the safeguard of human rights, is to be added by what we're discussing. Nino Foti, the president of the Magna Grecia Foundation, and we are doing a lot of work that is analyzing it across the spectrum, this phenomenon that must be tackled. Thank you, Fabrizio, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. I want to take up just a few minutes, and I will speak English to respect our guests.
Host, Ambassador Gianluca Greco, Deputy Permanent Representative of Italy in the United Nations. I would like also to thank our esteemed panel members. They are beside me. The Magna Grecia Foundation is an international organization that has been working for 40 years toward the social, cultural, and economic development of the regions of the southern of Italy, the ancient Magna Grecia that forms the basis of the Western civilizations. This also means addressing the phenomenon of organized crime. In today's context, individuals who care about southern Italy must keep in mind the criminal narratives that, unfortunately, take center stage in creating a popular symbol and stereotypes. The mafias, their meaning, and related languages have represented and continue to serve as a limitless comment source. Depending on the context, they can be condemned, used as a tool for awareness, provide a real analysis and research, but also serve a perfect ground for identification and celebration. At Magna Grecia Foundation, we have been carrying out studies with the aim of investigating the dynamics and the extent of how mafia organizations are portrayed and communicated in the digital world. As you can see in the report, we did a report last year. We presented the first report on the influence of the mafia in other criminal organizations. For example, the influence on the social media, in the platforms such Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and so on. We also felt to need to prepare a second report that we present today, which focused on mafia and cybercrime. From this emerged that Mafias operate digitally in a structured, strategic, and coordinated manner. Money laundering, cybercrime, crypto asset, and corruption are correlated. Cybersecurity must consider not only military and geopolitical risk, but also the threat posed by the criminal organization. Empirical evidence shows there is not way to objective asset to the vulnerability of cybercrime. We believe it is crucial to provide tools to interpret and understand this new interpret between organized crime, real and virtual dimensions, and the amount of information produced on this topic in the media. Information technologies, the rise of artificial intelligence, and the preponderance of the algorithms have a major impact on society and the global economy, colonizing social activities, education, politics, healthcare, and justice, influencing choice, action, and relationships. Consequently, the production of tools, opinion, and idea is heavily affected, representing a topic that cannot be overlooked by those involved in study and research of culture, its protection, regeneration, and disseminations. The research findings provide a wealth of data that allows us, on the one hand, to observe how individuals discuss and interpret the mafia phenomenon through digital media. On the other hand, they offer a glimpse into how the very protagonists of this phenomenon, be they clan members or merely sympathizers, represented themselves. Unfortunately, the symbol connected with the mafia narratives and the value these individuals propagate, and they are visible to the entire world, contributing to the prejudice toward southern Italy. We should reflect on how they raise awareness, especially among young people, on the importance of not identifying with such narrative. Supporting the research project stemmed from the belief we can construct a response rooted in a renewed narrative of legality. To this end, it is paramount to have a comprehensive and structured understanding of the context in which these forms of communications are generated and reproduced. Such responses can be achieved through projects of reaction deeply rooted in cultural and collective ability to produce content, particularly among young individuals. Such a reaction needed to be encouraged and, where necessary, supported, organized, and fostered. Those involved in safeguarding and promoting cultural heritage must be a role in fostering the ground of citizens who passionate about their land, especially the ones committed to upholding the principles of the legality, particularly in southern Italy. It is essential to tirelessly work toward restoring the dynamic rule of culture and a catalyst for personal and collective development. By doing this, we will be able to safeguard our sons and daughters, preventing them from being preyed upon by criminal digital narratives. This is why we have been doing our utmost to bring this research project to life. Let this be a source of inspiration for the future generation. Let us give our children a better chance in their life. Thank you.
Grazie Presidente. Ora due interventi prossimi con i quali entreremo nel cuore del rapporto. Vi voglio presentare Antonio Nicaso, che è professore alla Queen's University in Canada, è anche un giornalista, un saggista, è un esperto delle tematiche relative legate alla mafia, alle organizzazioni criminali e più in generale. È anche ovviamente il coordinatore del CR5, che è questo laboratorio che è il cuore di questo rapporto, che ha scandagliato, esaminato, studiato in fondo quelli che sono i cambiamenti dello scenario geopolitico mondiale e appunto ha tutto redatto, ha chiuso in questo rapporto contenente analisi e mappatura dei rischi. Qual è l'obiettivo? L'obiettivo è quello di identificare, mappare e analizzare nel profondo tutte le modalità di azione della criminalità organizzata, con lo specifico focus, lo sentirete, sul settore finanziario e creditizio. Prego, professore.
Grazie alla Fondazione Magna Grecia, grazie al Presidente Foti. Io parto da questo spunto, da questo assist che mi offre Fabrizio Furlani, il moderatore. Il primo aspetto che noi riusciamo a cogliere da questo studio è che esiste una correlazione tra criminalità organizzata e cybercrime. Noi spesso nell'immaginario collettivo
In the collective imagination, we often think of cybercrime as an exclusive domain of cyber pirates who hide behind a screen and attack the sites that are vulnerable. Instead, what is emerging forcefully is an aspect that we could call, as you can tell from my title, of more and more hybrid organized crime, hybrid between analogical reality and the virtual and digital reality. When we think of organized crime, obviously we think of mafia crime, which is one form of organized crime. But to be able to understand and frame this, we're looking at two basic aspects. One, which is ontological, tied to rites, symbols, and myths that are associated and give meaning and help to give a sense of identity and of belonging. Then there is an aspect that is fundamental, especially in mafia-type organizations, relationship-oriented. If you see on this particular slide, when I had the possibility to interview Bonanno, one of the Bonanno families, who was walking towards sunset in Arizona, he told me that the relationship was the glue that ties together the members of organized crime and those who from the outside gave strength to it, give support to it. If this relationship aspect is fundamental to understanding organized criminal organizations, this is another important aspect of our study, is to get rid of the idea of social capital. We've always imagined social capital to be what? Lawyers, brokers, businessmen, and these people of this category who have always been sort of officials of the logical of power and of investment of criminal organizations. We have to instead get over this perception, because today social capital that is being used by the organized criminal organizations can be conducted instead to drug designers, to cyber pirates. When I say drug designers, what do we need them to change? The molecular structure of a substance that then helps to create synthetic drugs. By changing the molecular structure, this substance can travel easily until it is sequestered and analyzed into the list of dangerous substances. If we look at this aspect, and we have more and more social capital consisting of this type of professional figure, we imagine a scenario which I could describe as a kind of criminal Darwinism. In America, we're thinking, obviously, of the 5 families of Cosa Nostra. I conducted an analysis and asked to the district attorney of New York to send me all the work of all the operations of the past 10 years, so I could organize, so that I could analyze all the operations conducted toward the 5 families of New York since 2014 to 2024. What comes out of this? For one, the acting of Contra was very effective because these organizations are, in a certain sense, dying. There's an anographic question, a laugh of a rotation, a generational rotation. So if we analyze the type of crimes, we discover there's extortion, homicide, racketeering in general, money laundering. The only thing which is more up-to-date is online gambling. If we compare this to Italian organized criminal organizations, which is not a primacy that we're proud of, but we discovered that in the past 10 years, also thanks to many investigations conducted in Italy, we find criminal organizations like 'Ndrangheta, the Camorra, which are capable of doing what? Of bringing into the places of origin the best hackers, the ones who can create a false news, who can invest €500 million euros in trading platforms, who are capable of mining cryptocurrency. This is the most important currency. They don't have to convert money into cryptocurrency, but with complex systems, computer systems, thanks to which requires a great expensive energy, it is possible to create these points and enter into the blockchain. So they create their own currency. So there's a generational gap, which, as I was saying before, this is what I meant by criminal Darwinism. One of the organizations which might disappear is Cosa Nostra in America. Why? Because they are not adapting to this new frontier of the digital world. They are not modernizing and getting rid of. They're not updating their work, for example, in money laundering. The acquirement of cocaine can be acquired through the dark web. They can do everything that the digital space offers in terms of opportunities. They are not exploiting these opportunities. This aspect is fundamental. If you envision the type of investment that was discovered in one of the recent investigations coordinated by the brokers, the hackers, and the criminal organizations that belong to 'Ndrangheta have been able to acquire bonds from American Eagle Black, which are ancient bonds from the early 20th century, thanks to a few through collusion with some friends with military hierarchs. There's a possibility, the possibility of using platforms that exist in only 3 countries, China, in Canada, and in Great Britain, thanks to which it is possible to invest for 45 days at least €500 million in order to have huge margins of profit margins, and to make money generated from criminal activity to circulate continuously. So we are facing a new crime, ransomware, which has become the new pizza. Imagine it. Oh, the new pizza. I mean, the new bribe. And imagine, once upon a time, money was presented to a boss, but now instead, maybe a hacker who lives in maybe Romania or North Korea. And there's it's data that we find, and they can mine enough information to extort someone. So those who have always paid to the physically present boss instead find themselves for a reality in which the boss is not present. The idea of paying twice won't be practicable. So also in terms of the symbolism, which gives power to this deeply rooted phenomenon, rather than on the digital space. This is what is holding the American mafias back. So when we talk, and in conclusion, when we speak about the possibilities offered today, for example, the possibility of using the metaverse that guarantees the possibility of creating virtual meetings, online meetings, where they talk on the part of bosses who can stay at home, and so there will be a problem of the responsibility of who is responsible for a crime. We're talking about the possibility of simulating different drug routes to understand which are most vulnerable and least protected by the countering operator, and able to simulate these routes and to choose those which are most important. The possibility of asking AI new methods of money laundering, the possibility of organizing so-called big data to be able to understand the tastes and orientations of those who use social media. So to identify in the sector on which to place your bets. This is a year in which we will vote. This is a year in which there will be most voting in the world. So the possibility of using the deep fakes to be able to condition, to influence the democratic elections. Imagine the possibility of creating a video and putting it online and make one politician say something that he would never say. So as you can see, synthetic drugs, which have a strategic objective today, which is, to eliminate the productive cycle of opium, for example, of cocoa leaves, because everything will be possible to create in the laboratory instead. Today, and especially in the United States, heroin has been completely replaced, and they're synthesizing red heroin, and this is becoming a very troubling aspect. So what should we do? Understand the Magna Grecia had the ability and the intelligence to address these issues, because we are very much unprepared, and we risk in our fight against hybrid organized crime of encountering the problems we have with cryptocurrency. Now there are deep coins, but we don't know about many of the other kinds of cryptocurrency that exist that become harder and harder to trace. So the Magna Grecia Foundation, as you can see, has been presented in Italy at the Chamber of Deputies, had the virtue of understanding that mafias have always communicated with each other. So we must not be surprised by the fact that some mafias today are using social media. They have always communicated, in their way, how to dress, how to speak, and they've always been excellent communicators. Today, they've understood that the digital space is an extension of the physical territory, And this is what we must try to understand, because mafioso risks becoming an influence of understanding better than I certain aspects that can be traced to the digital space. The second report helps us to understand one thing: technology, like AI, is agnostic. We shouldn't be afraid of the new technology. We shouldn't be afraid of artificial intelligence. The problem is the use that it's made of it, and we must try to use AI to fight against organized crime, to do everything possible to give greater strength to the fight against organized crime. The problem, however, is the speed at which we do this. And there I have to highlight and underline that in terms of policy, we are excellent at defending, more defending than attacking. But the prosecutor will explain this. But at the same time, we are paying too little attention to attacks on small and medium enterprises, which are not investing enough in cybersecurity. What we need to think is this: if first, when we could have conceded an advantage, a distance to organized criminal organizations, there is also possible to go after them if today we give space and time to organize criminal organizations that are in a certain sense restructuring, that are, for example, I'm thinking of the Mexican cartels. We know that they have used the submarines in order to send cocaine from Latin America toward Europe. Can you imagine what they're doing? They can use drones also. This year, the idea of using drones with facial recognition, so there'll be no need for input, or someone who can say, go to the drone and hit that individual. Let's the hypothetical possibility of that type of communication. It won't be possible because since the drone can reach, since the drone has facial recognition, all you have to do is program the faces into it, and the drone will take care of everything. All you do is give the drone the face. This is a scenario that should not escape from our hands. We must address it quickly, intelligently, and above all, keeping in mind one thing, and let's say this clearly, with force and determination. And I conclude, the activity of fighting this type of organized crime, which is more and more hybrid, has to become a priority action of the government of every country, and especially at the United Nations. There is no possibility of logical discrimination on this front. We must go to the top. Otherwise, we will struggle even to make arrests. Thank you. Thank you, Professor. This is a framework that brings out many things to think about. Now to Nicola Gratteri, the Chief Prosecutor of Naples, because of his experience in the field. We've seen frontiers that open into unknown directions. Can you talk about what? It's very hard to talk about what's happening in your field. Yes, very quickly. Obviously, I thank the Magna Grecia Foundation, and Nino Folti. I'm very happy with this important work being done of this book, of this research that has been done that I consider a very high level. It's the most updated work possible. Most up-to-date work that we have. Right now, in this historic moment, we are behind. We are late. We're very late. Because there is a great acceleration on organized crime in the internet world and in the dark web. Mafias exist. Why? Because they interact with the people. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. They would be disorganized. They wouldn't be able to communicate. which are easily, otherwise they would be easy to beat and to cut down to size. But why do mafias exist? Because power. The economy needs mafias. Power and the economy requires mafias. What we deal with today are mafias that have also conquered and taken possession of the computer world. And as Professor Nicaso said, we have already seen that they don't need advertising. They behave exactly like a business. In the second half of the 20th century, they could buy an entire soccer team, players, trainers. So at in the courthouse, where the president of the club, everyone sort of compliments them. There is the ruling class that is involved. On the other hand, there are the people who see the ruling class, how it interacts with representatives of the team, or else in the relationships with the church, when mafias would contribute to restructure churches or buy pews or enable processions. So through the internet, the mafia has changed instead. The first were the Mexicans using Facebook. In Italy, the first with the Camorra. Today, more and more, the children of the Camorra show themselves with designer clothing or luxury cars, with a lot of money to say, we are the model. Come with us, and you will become rich like us. So this is the attractive. And the 'Ndrangheta Camorra, which in terms of order, but someone who doesn't sort of abide by that will never become a capo, and will end up either in jail or killed. Today, the mafias today have abandoned Facebook and are on TikTok instead, which is much more invasive. And on TikTok, they are able to sort of advertise themselves in a more concrete way. In our investigations, we have seen how the results and the effects of criminals have through the use of TikTok. They are able to obtain results, not only in terms of consensus, but in terms of enlisting workers and garzoni, The mafia elites, however, before October 2023, coming to Naples, we conducted an investigation, which is mentioned in this report, where we demonstrated how a German broker flew to the 'Ndrangheta and in 20 minutes was able to make a €1 million transaction with 3 banks on 3 different continents. Then we saw an enlistment of Romanian hackers. There is a tradition of mathematicians. Ceausescu. There's a great mathematical tradition of mathematicians in Romania. So once you have your degree in that field, either you're going to be a teacher, making very little money, but if you're a hacker for mafia, then you'll be very rich. In this way, we have seen a kind of agency, not only in Romania, but also in Bulgaria, which we were concerned by how easy it was for the 'Ndrangheta and the Camorra to buy and to pay these hackers. In Naples, I ran into an investigation where the Camorra was able to build a bank, an online bank, and to launder a bank with 6 million customers, 6,000 clients from Lombardia, from Lombardy, from Lazio, but also with places in Lithuania, with 3.6 billion euros. We were able to sequester 2 billion euros. What was surprising about these banks was that we found a technology that our judiciary police does not have because it has not been purchased. It is one instrument, one of this type of technology of Israeli origin, cost 5 million euros, which helped to prevent interception of physical places where the people have to meet. But the Italian judiciary police was excellent and finally succeeded, nevertheless, at entering within this online bank. We, as in Calabria and in Campania, but especially in Calabria, in the province of Reggio Calabria near the Ionian, we have seen dozens and dozens of sites where the 'Ndrangheta extracts cybercoin. The same thing in Campania. So the mafias are producing on their cyber currency on their own. By imagining the dark web as an aspect of the internet, imagine the dark web being the universe and the spaces and the possibilities that it has on the part of organized crime. But we have seen criminals at very high levels in front of a computer capable of buying 2 million kilos of cocaine without having to go into the fields, without having to go there personally. So we're instead still dealing with Ndrangheta Bokassa, who lives in Cartagena, Bogota, who can meet a Masonic boss from the Colombian cartel to buy 2 million kilos of coke. But today, the most advanced part of the mafia is able to buy 2 million kilos without moving from his office, from his sofa. So in terms of do we or not need interceptions? This isn't fantasy. This isn't the future. It's today. We're talking about criminal organizations that are able to order 2 million kilos of coke and have it transported to Amsterdam and Anversa without moving, and using cryptocurrency without moving, without traveling from the place where they live. We have documented mafia elites able to buy 40 kilos of gold per week, always through the dark web, who are capable of buying territories, islands, always through the dark web. If this is a reality, what can we do? We have seen that Europe doesn't spend very much on security. It spends very little on informatics, on technology, because they still don't understand fully what is happening with the internet and the dark web and the possibilities that are within it. We see that in the world, the states that are spending the most are a little Israel, for example. Israel might have exaggerated with the technology, abandoning instead operations on the ground. And we see the results. Europe is not safe. It is wide open in terms of security. And if we think, for example, of Italy, even more so. In Italy, we were paying for the gap of what in 2010, the public administration had a blockage in financing. So today we find people of either 60 years old or 28 years old because of this gap in hiring and budget freeze. What we need is to hire computer experts and experts on hacking but we had to find a different way of contracting them. If you can't pay someone 2 million euros, if instead they're going to get 5 million from the organized crime. So what happens? The forces of order have to learn these things themselves. Right now we have a judiciary police elite, the postal police specialized in this type of investigation. Another structure in the Guardia di Finanza for this type of, but we're talking about very, very low numbers. And the Carabinieri are also beginning to create a team capable of breaking through these platforms. What are these platforms? We have organized criminal organizations in the world. In a way, you could say the wholesalers of cocaine who can, through WhatsApp, speak with each other, and we listen to them. We fill our mouth saying Italy this, the best judiciary police in the world, et cetera, in terms of know-how, in terms of the ability to summarize, but in terms of technology, we are far behind. Why? The proof is in the fact that the BIGAPA, the German federal police that came to me begging me or asking me to investigate the Strasbourg massacre today, they were able to break through a platform. So they call us, and they give us 40,000 files, audio files to listen to. Same with the Dutch. They have always followed. Today they can break through. The French are able to enter into these platforms. So there's a lot of work to do. It's a political problem, national in Italy or Europe-wide and international, because the future of mafias, this is a future of mafias. The story of the 500 sort of like, little bribe, it will still exist, but it'll become more and more marginal by comparison, because those who have money will decide, can destine it towards the territory. If the mafias are able, through artificial intelligence, to influence the way of thinking, the way of behaving of people, for example, like buying a television, buying a newspaper. They can also buy a public opinion. They will be able to do this. Because unfortunately, politics is slow and always gets there late, but it's not just an Italian problem. I see it throughout the world. In conclusion, Professor Nicasa concluded, and I share his conclusions. He said something very important when he spoke about the involvement of the UN. We must make countries understand that are at war, understand that think right now that they are the masters of the world, that the mafia problem is not a problem that only concerns problems where you have a free democracy. The mafia problem also concerns countries under authoritarian rule, or countries where there is the appearance of a democracy. And this is the place, the UN, where synergy must be created to fight against the mafia. Apart from that, continue your wars, your dialectical wars. But when you talk about the mafia, put aside thoughts of a war and think that this is a fight. The fight against the mafia regards every country in the world. Thank you.
Come diceva lei, giustamente c'è tanto da fare, un grido d'allarme.
As you were saying, there's a lot to be done, and it's an alarm, and I hope it will be implemented as soon as possible. I will give the word to Ronald J. Clark, who is the CEO of Spartan Strategy and Risk Management, Deputy Undersecretary for National Protection and Department of Homeland Security, so that he can analyze and describe what the situation is like in the U.S. in terms of the scenario that we have been describing so far.
Thank you for that very Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to New York. Thanks to those who've traveled far to get here. Apologies about the weather yesterday. I think we're a little better today, and hopefully that will continue. You know, I know any of these type of events always takes 1,000 hands to make it happen. Folks at the table, folks in the back, standing there. So it's always a temptation to go through that list. But I remember the old admonishment that the people you thank will forget, and the people you forget to thank will never forget. So I'll avoid those perilous shores and just say great thanks to all who made this possible. Now, something you don't know is that I've also, as of the last 48 hours, been in an Italian immersion course. So I've attempted to present these remarks to you in Italian. I do recall that fortune does favor the brave, and valor is the better part of discretion, but possibly I'll spare you my Italian for now. I think the last note to self is note to self, never follow the chief prosecutor of Naples in a conversation like this. Lessons learned, continue to learn and evolve here. As we navigate this ever-evolving landscape of technology, we must confront the reality that criminal entities are rapidly harnessing the capabilities of advanced technologies like AI to further their malicious agendas. The marriage of criminal organizations with artificial intelligence represents a dangerous escalation in the cyber domain. AI, with its ability to analyze vast amounts of data, identify vulnerabilities, and adapt in real time, provides these groups with unprecedented agility and sophistication in carrying out their attacks. From autonomous malware capable of evading detection to AI-driven social engineering tactics that exploit human vulnerabilities with uncanny precision. The arsenal of cyber criminals has been augmented by the power of machine intelligence. The convergence poses a grave threat to our cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, and our very way of life. It's essential to understand that the implications of AI-enhanced cyber attacks extend far beyond the digital realm. These assaults have the potential to disrupt critical infrastructure, impact financial markets, and sow chaos in our societies. The consequences of such actions are not merely theoretical, they are tangible and far-reaching. At this point, why don't I share with you my sense of the broader threat landscape? Avril Haines, old friend, now the Director of National Intelligence, characterized the global situation as follows. There is an increasingly fragile world order where state and non-state actors are challenging long-standing rules of the international system and the democratic nation's primacy within it. General Keith Alexander, the former director of the National Security Agency, sort of the main, sort of strongest player in the United States in the cyberspace, characterized what's happened in the last decades as the largest wealth transfer in history, from the theft of intellectual property to crypto heists, just as the chief prosecutor of Naples and Antonio were reflecting upon. Within the cyber domain, you see both state and non-state actors. And the state actors, you have rogue nation states as well as near-peer competitors with advanced capabilities. On the non-state side, you see criminals and terrorists, foreign and domestic, as well as those that are individual actors and others that are transnational criminal organizations with extraordinary reach and capabilities. There was a time, and I think my colleagues would agree, where there were more lanes, if you will, between nation-state and non-state actors. The lanes were more defined and isolated. Criminal organizations had reservations about associations with terrorist groups. The reality was, if a Mexican cartel aligned themselves and did the bidding of a terrorist organization, it unleashes a set of global authorities that are unique to terrorists that you can't do with criminals. If you think about the United States' conduct of counterterrorism operations around the globe, the reality is the United States, NATO, will largely go anywhere, any place, with or without host nation consent to prosecute a terrorist. If it's a criminal organization, the authorities are more complex. They fall into a law enforcement category. It's not Title 10, it's not Title 50. Those are kind of U.S. authorities in the counterterrorism space. So criminal organizations traditionally had reservations about their association with known terrorist groups. I wouldn't say it was a moral decision, certainly not, but rather a business decision. A transnational criminal organization didn't want the added scrutiny and pressure associated that these type of affiliations bring. Today, however, this cyber domain has brought a stew of state, non-state, terrorists, and criminal cyber actors who at times are wittingly or unwittingly acting together. Today, we see nation-states employing transnational criminal organizations and terrorist groups in the cyber realm to achieve contractual end states agreed upon by all parties. So the stew has gotten very complicated, along with the authorities and legal frameworks to counter those threats. For law enforcement, it creates an attribution challenge, a struggle to answer the most basic question: who am I fighting? Who is responsible? At any given moment, you're fighting all the above. A terrorist organization under contract by a transnational criminal organization that is, in fact, to carve out achieving the end state desired by a nation state. Within this complex threat landscape, we're seeing and will continue to see a proliferation of cyber attacks, financial crimes, and automated weaponization of social media. Clearly, criminal organizations have not remained immune to AI's allure. Criminals employ AI algorithms to breach systems, infiltrate networks, and steal sensitive data. Machine learning models can adapt and evolve, making them formidable adversaries in the digital realm. AI-driven phishing attacks, deepfake scams, and ransomware campaigns exploit vulnerabilities, leaving individuals, corporations, and governments vulnerable. Socially engineered attacks are increasing in not just quantity, volume, velocity, but also in their sophistication, their targeting, and their effect. Financial crimes. AI enables criminals and terrorists to analyze patterns, predict market movements, and manipulate financial transactions. Market manipulation, insider trading, and money laundering become more sophisticated. Fraud detection systems must grow to grapple with this AI-generate fraudulent activities that blend seamlessly with legitimate transactions. AI algorithms amplify disinformation, propaganda, and recruitment efforts on social platforms. Extremist groups exploit sentiment analysis and personalized content delivery to radicalize individuals. Law enforcement faces an uphill battle in identifying and countering these AI-driven narratives. For transnational criminal organizations, the cyber domain represents a lucrative and low-risk path for criminal activity. Unlike sending a team to rob a bank in the physical world, a ransomware option is comparatively low risk. Robbing a bank is hard and hazardous. There's lots of security associated with it, well-defined consequences, and you risk your life doing it. Hacking a company, stealing intellectual property while sitting at a keyboard thousands of miles away is significantly lower risk in every possible way. Attribution is difficult, legal authorities are complex, and cyber and AI capabilities are increasingly proliferating and easily procured. The power of cyber operations enhanced by AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, generally thought of as a subset of AI, enables a place where nefarious interests and capabilities overlap with a massive reduction in risk and downside, all with a definitive increase in reward and upside. Democratic nation states and their law enforcement organizations face something of a Gordian knot. When I think about the 16,000 law enforcement officers I once led, they are increasingly facing syndicates of criminal and terrorist organizations who are actively leveraging access to advanced technologies in increasingly compelling ways. My old team faces in many ways an unfair fight, a profound asymmetry between a law enforcement organization bound by law and values juxtaposed to criminal organizations who have no rules and increasingly have unchecked access to advanced technologies. As criminals adopt AI, law enforcement must stay ahead, yet they're hamstrung in most cases and in many ways way behind. Detecting AI-generated deepfakes, tracking crypto transactions, and identify hidden patterns require cutting-edge tools. Here's the challenge. How many people here have access to ChatGPT? Anyone? Anyone play with it? All right. What about Copilot? All right, one. Gemini? Any sort of AI? Okay. So you have access to something that law enforcement does not. The challenge with even Grammarly, you know that old program Grammarly where you type it in and it would kind of, take you back to 8th grade English? The problem is, do you know who copyrights that? Do you know who owns your data when you put it in? Grammarly owns everything that you put in there, and that's part of the way that their system gets more sophisticated. Same thing with ChatGPT-4. So the actual data that you're putting in, so you can imagine my old team typing in various mafia kingpins and trying to figure out relationships in ChatGPT-4, which will very thoughtfully develop something for you, right? So for law enforcement, that's just not a viable pathway. And if you think about it from an intelligence community perspective, using open source tools that retain their inquiries and keep their data is deeply problematic. As you can imagine, putting in a various high-profile nefarious terrorists into ChatGPT-4 and trying to assess all known aliases, and if there was ever an image taken that then pops up in 1998 in the Baghdad Times, there's a single image of them. Very productive morning, great use of AI, gravely problematic, though, for the intelligence community, loading that information in there. So for law enforcement, for the intelligence community, for the national security, we will be forced to rely upon building exquisite, costly systems. which is all code for it will take a long time and likely will always be behind the adversary, as given as fast as the commercial path continues to grow. I think going forward, we must accept the reality that the AI war is upon us and that law enforcement and defense organizations must adapt. As a colleague once noted in the Department of Defense, we either get on the AI bus or we get run over by it. The United States and NATO defense organizations get this. To compete against an AI-empowered adversary, you must invest and field viable programs, like the Department of Defense's Project Maven and the Loyal Wingman program. We must accelerate our investment in AI expertise. We must invest in cutting-edge cybersecurity measures that leverage AI for defense. Furthermore, collaboration between governments, fitting place, given the place that we're in, industry leaders, cybersecurity experts is essential. We must share intelligence, best practices, and resources to stay one step ahead of the cyber criminals. Additionally, robust regulations and international frameworks must be established to govern the ethical use of AI and mitigate its potential use by malicious actors. We're already seeing work manifest in this space, whether it's the United Nations, EU, NATO, President Biden releasing an executive order on AI. Right here in this building on March 21st, 2024, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution on the promotion of safe, secure, and trustworthy AI systems. Creating guardrails and controls around technologies, be it nuclear or semis, is nothing new. And just in this case, traditionally, most advanced technologies for most of the arc of history have emerged first where the sovereign, the nation state, had supremacy, and gradually it proliferated from that core. In this case, it's different. In this case, the private sector is moving exponentially faster than governments around the world. From a geostrategic perspective, Western democracies are far more vulnerable to AI-generated deepfakes or AI-driven socially engineered operations than totalitarian regimes where transparency, freedom of speech, and the very rule of law is profoundly absent. Remember, the battle against AI-empowered criminal organizations is not about algorithms. It's about safeguarding our societies, values, and the rule of law. Thank you.
Grazie Ronald per il tuo intervento molto preciso.
Thank you, Ronald, for your presentation, which is very accurate. And we understand that we need to run. We really don't have time. And talking about running, the next speech will be by Antonello Colosimo, the Regional Audit Chamber President for the Umbria region at the Italian Supreme Audit Institution. And it will be a way to compare Italian norms to European ones because we need to run, indeed. Good morning, everybody. The topic for today's discussion seems to imply indirectly that there's another question, and that is the challenge of transnational organized crime at the time of AI and the Internet. As we heard from Nicasio and Gratteri, we moved from and I'm going to say this ironically, from a romantic style organized crime that would use a shotgun and knives and blood to a crime that doesn't budge from their sofa and uses face recognition to commit crimes to a much higher scale. And all of this is accelerated by AI, which boosts this in a terrifying way to project these terrifying phenomena all over the world. And what answers do we give to such trends? The European Union adopted a regulation which is 270 pages long with 90,000 words. The Bible has 4 Gospels with 146 pages, and the first 4 books of the Old Testament have 248 pages. Well, it's easy to understand the difference between an eternal text and a text that should regulate a phenomenon of this scope. And then we have laws at national and international levels that can create an obstacle to trends that, as Prosecutor Gatteri said, require speed and require IT tools that are at the same level, because there's an old saying that says if you have a criminal, you need a criminal and a half. And that means that you need to respond to whatever the criminal does in a much, much stronger way. In Italy, we are discussing a cybercrime draft for a law that is based on an approval with no financial endowment. How can we fight such trends without having a budget for it? And then there's another aspect that we don't keep in mind, and that is, if you have to fight this trend with a law that is very detailed, the risk is that we can be in a situation which is the same we had 400 years ago when there was the situation with Galileo Galilei, who was heavily criticized by the church because he was talking about science as opposed to faith. And hundreds of years later, the Catholic Church had to ask for forgiveness for this. So the whole idea is that we need a framework that allows science to work in an effective way to contrast these trends that criminals do use by using all the scientific resources in an intelligent way. And therefore, we have a complicated scenario ahead of us. We have a situation that keeps growing. Prosecutor Gratteri was telling us that we just see the tip of the iceberg compared to what actually goes on. And in Italy, we are losing ground compared to our ability that we had in the past to fight these trends. And as Antonio was saying, we are deeply unprepared in front of this. But here, we are the UN, and we must send a positive message of hope, because otherwise we would need to just accept that we will be the victims of AI. I want to remind you of the etymology of intelligence, intus legere, that is, read inside, read into. And therefore, we must be able to understand these trends, and we need to be able to respond to them. So we need to think that those who today perform crime can be young, and they can be very well informed and capable, and they act within a market, and cybercrime offers them options that the market doesn't give them, because they are offered significant gains and significant profit. So if we cannot promote ethics within schools, within universities, where people's conscience is shaped, we run the risk of just feeding into organized crime, and these organizations will be able to hire people that will be able to become soldiers of these organizations. And cybercrime has made this easier and easier, and AI just feeds into this. So governments and states and transnational entities must go beyond creating legal frameworks. They need to focus on education, so that they need to give the resources for people to harness scientific resources. Thank you, Mr. Colosimo. This was very interesting. And let's focus on AI, which is the core topic of today's event. Let's try to listen to the words of Arthur J. Gallarza, Circuit Judge of the United States Court of Appeals of the Federal Circuit. We've already spoken to him many times about AI. So this is a new frontier to be discovered and to be better understood. Thank you. You have the floor.
Pulsanti.
That's artificial intelligence. Right. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you all for being here. It's been very instructive to me, looking at it from the rule of law, that people always rely on the fact that the democratic form of government is established and founded on the basis of rule of law. And we have to recognize that governments are ruled by human beings, and sometimes the rule of law is set aside. And one of the problems that we have had with artificial intelligence, if we look back and determine how computers were formed, they were developed during the Second World War by a gentleman at Turing. Turing is the father of computers. He was working for the British intelligence service, and they're the ones who basically broke the code of the German high command. And they used computers. The aspects of developing computers from there began during the Second World War, completed today, where we have chips that have been invented by companies like NVIDIA, by small companies like Microsoft and some of the others, who have used the technology to assimilate aspects of data. Today's world, the common carrier that we have are the platforms that develop data on each individual action that's taken. And using that as a basis for the information for artificial intelligence. Data is just one of the aspects that needs to be taken into account. Artificial intelligence is a voracious user of data. It takes data from every angle that it can, just like cybersecurity and other aspects. The individual aspects of recognition. The politicians have a tendency to, and I have to excuse myself for the politicians in the room, but they're always very slow and behind in the technological developments. For instance, the executive order that was introduced by President Joe Biden back in October was a global agreement on artificial intelligence. It was seen by experts as a positive step towards, but one that would require more action from policymakers, because policymakers are very instrumental to ensure that AI isn't harmful to workers, democratic systems, and the privacy of people around the world. The 20-page agreement was reached by 18 countries, including the US, UK, Germany, Italy, Israel, Nigeria, and I noticed today that Romania and Bulgaria are not part of that group. The development of artificial intelligence relies very heavily on mathematical formulas and algorithms. The agreement is non-binding. Politicians don't like to have binding agreements for some reason, but it's non-binding on the countries. For four main areas that are covered: they secure design, development, deployment, and operation and maintenance of the deals in the areas of artificial intelligence. Policymakers, including the Director of U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, Jen Easterly, forged the agreement with a heavy focus on keeping AI technology safe from hackers and security breaches. But remember, this is only a recommendation. It's not mandatory that they follow it. The document includes recommendations such as implementing standard cybersecurity best practices, monitoring the security of an AI supply chain, across the system's life cycles, and releasing models only after subjecting them to appropriate and effective security evaluations. Quote, "This is the first time that we have seen an affirmative action that these capabilities should not just be about cool features. and how quickly we can get them to market and how we can compete to drive down costs. Easterly told Reuters, the document, she said, represents an agreement that the most important thing that needs to be done or the design phase is security. Norm Heisen, a senior fellow at Brookings Institution, which is a think tank in Washington, said the deal is a step in the right direction for security in a field that UK experts recently warned is vulnerable to hackers who could launch prompt injection attacks, causing an AI model to behave in a way that the designer didn't intend to reveal private information. But it's there. But that's not the only area where AI can cause harm, Eisen said in the social media. Eisen pointed to recent Brookings analysis about how AI could weaken democracy in the United States and other countries, wondering the flood of misinformation with deepfakes and other AI-generated images. You probably have heard about the deepfake ad that was placed on U.S. television showing that President Biden was represented to keep people away from the voting booths. That was an AI deepfake analysis. It was not President Biden who was making that statement. And if we can do that with AI, we can do that with just about everything else. Advocacy groups of individuals looking to misrepresent public opinion may find an ally in AI. Along with Nicholas Turner, Colby Gillespie last week said AI-fueled programs like ChatGPT can fabricate letters to elected officials, public comments, and other written endorsements of specific bills or positions that are often difficult to distinguish from those written by actual constituents. Much worse, voice and image replica harnessed from generative AI tools can also mimic candidates and elected officials. These tactics give rise to voter confusion and degrade confidence in the electoral process if voters become aware of such scams. At Apple Insider, tech writer Malcolm Owen denounced Sunday's agreement as toothless and weak, considering it does not require policymakers or companies to adhere to the guidelines. This is the problem we have with AI. These are only guidelines. We need to have enforcement, and enforcement means that politicians have to understand what AI can impose upon the general public, not only in the hidden cybersecurity area, but also the European Union member countries just recently passed a draft of what the European Parliament called the world's first comprehensive AI law with the AI Act. The law would require AI systems makers to publish summaries of the training materials they use and prove that they will not generate illegal content. It would also bar the companies from scraping biometric data from social media, which a U.S. AI company was found to be doing last year. The parameters and the guardrails we need to establish a limitation on AI is not there unless our political body understands what it is and the impacts and the negative impacts that it can carry forward. We need to have them stand up, have the backbone to stay what these guidelines are, establish the rule of law so that AI can be controlled, not only on the basis of organized crime, but the rest of society, and making sure that our democratic form of government is not diminished by the use of AI in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I would like to hear from Saverio Romano from the Italian Parliament. We'll talk about, Gaiazza was saying, that we need to normalize. We need to pass laws with very clear guidelines. At what point are we right now with guidelines? I would like to thank all of those who have spoken before me because they gave me important things to think about. I prepared a speech to say some things, but by necessity, I have to change what I was going to say because the technology goes ahead very quickly. Then the legislator might want to propose. First consideration, how much awareness is there of cybercrime? How much consciousness, how much awareness is on the part of the common citizens, rather than not just politicians, on the need for cybersecurity? Cybercrime, because it is online, because it is virtual, is distant is far from being considered an imminent risk. Even it's the most imminent risk that we have by comparison to physical crime, because it can take place in a few instants and it's devastating, but it is not perceived by public opinion as something more immediate than physical crime, because since policy is fed by public opinion and by consensus, so politics must make an extra effort to understand this phenomenon in such a way that those who offer consensus to politics can realize what the politicians are called upon to do and can understand the dimensions of this type of crime. Cybercrime is a problem, especially in democratic countries. Let us make this distinction, because in democrature, which puts together false democracies behind which a dictatorship is hidden, they have fewer problems. Or, no problems in dictatorships. Why? Because when they take a decision, that decision is already operative. And since in the legislation concerning cybercrime, you have to intervene in democratic countries through procedures that concern costs, which are important, which are major, because to convince a parliamentarian that a certain amount has been invested in that rather than a school and society, because it's an imminent problem, is an issue that concerns democratic processes, not the decision-making processes of a dictatorship. And there's a very high risk. There's another risk that dictatorships don't have, that of the mafia's penetration into administrative processes. Except, so the information, which is very parliamentary activities, anti-mafia, with the exception of the Anti-Mafia Commission, investigations, hearings, they're immediately put on the website of the Chamber of Deputies or of the Senate. I'm honored to preside over the Commission on Simplification. There will be very few moments in which we will request secrecy. Otherwise everything is very public. So imagine that there are criminal organizations that want to understand in what direction the Italian Parliament in what direction the Parliament is moving to create laws where there are no laws. Because the status in Italy right now is this: only in the 1980s, with immigration of social and economic norms toward the web, did we begin to think that we would need laws to govern these phenomena. And then we intervened mainly in the criminal area through a law of 2019 by establishing an article where we established for the first time the security perimeters that concerned various crimes within Italy. We're at year zero then. And if, as the President Colosso recalled, in the establishment of the chamber, a bill is presented regarding cybersecurity in our country, and in certain senses also addresses addresses cybercrime, it says a lot about how late we are and how instead the work done by Professor Nicaso tells us something. Not only is the world different than what we think it is, but that it is already imagining doing much more than it has already done and has been addressed by legislators in a complete way. So we are facing a challenge, an epical challenge in a certain sense. It will require a lot of hard work, but also through the work the Magna Grecia Foundation is doing, it can be a stimulant, it can be a prompt, a path to follow to enable the decision makers to take measures and study before taking measures to fight the phenomena. The conclusions to which, the commission that I chair, in the previous legislature, we looked at two aspects. On the one hand, the digitalization, computerization of public administration, and said health, digitalization of health services. In today's world, everything has to be digital. We hope that we're making good use of work that has already been prepared but must be implemented through the use of artificial intelligence. Because procedures that have to do with the simplification, we're going to obviously use artificial intelligence to achieve the goals. Imagine how many laws there are in our country that have been maybe repealed indirectly through a sort of hierarchical structure, but it's not written in any place. Therefore, certain administrations make reference to a ruling class that is old in our administration and perhaps does not realize and is not up to date on the process of the legislature and doesn't know exactly what laws should be applied on a specific fact. So our administrative courts are full of fights because of this, of controversy because of this. If we were more up to date, this wouldn't always happen. On this respect, concerning the simplification or streamlining, another problem is open regarding access of citizens to the world, to the administration, to the government, to its relationship with the state, and the protection of the citizen. Why do I say the protection of the citizen? Because for some time now, not only through processes of communication between the public administration, citizens, we can inform all of our data. We also have no reservations, but our data that we provide to the public administration, we are also at the same time informing private companies. You might go around and we go to a store before asking for payment for what you've bought. They might ask you if you have an email. When you buy something, they ask you to fill out a survey. They want your data. They're not interested so much in real money. They want to know why your data is precious to them, and these data are then commercialized or then sold. I'm not making this up. They have a value, and these data might end up in the circuits, in illegal circuits, with making it easier to imagine what the habits of Antonio Locaso are. And some worker is talking about calls might offer him a car on his iPhone. But it might also happen that some may make an instrumental use, knowing the habits of an individual involved in important activities, which would request greater reserve of theft, would enter into him like a knife cutting through. there are certain aspects that are multiple, that are interconnected, that the legislator must address in a complete and full way through pathways that must also look at those who are able to make a contribution, and I'm close to my conclusion, who must be engaged in providing to make a contribution that will enable a legislator to pass laws effectively. On page 68 of this important work of Professor Nicaso, there is one aspect concerning the risk index. Let's start with that. Let us see what the actual businesses are, not just public, but private. What is the risk index of our country? Let's understand how to address it in terms of risk, and then the rest will follow. I thank you once again for the excellent work that you've done. No. George Vasilis, Undersecretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Before starting, say how fundamental the geopolitical aspect is and the military aspect is. And we are there are two wars in our context now. This is a challenge. The challenge of cybercrime also has a military aspect. Good. Hello to everyone. I had prepared, and I will proceed. I will speak in English, but take advantage of the interpretation to reflect, to have some political remarks based upon what I've heard so far, and what politics with respect to technicians and metabolize, and try to summarize. I am not 100 years old. I'm only 46, but I remember perfectly when, in my post-adolescent period, when I was 20, 23, 24, 25, internet barely existed then. Email was very little known. Smartphones didn't exist, and the social media didn't exist. If you wanted, for example, at a disco, to pay court or to flirt with a girl, you had to have the courage to go close to her, speak with her, ask for her phone number, and the phone number was the family home number, the landline, not a cellular. Today, none of this exists. All you need to know is a nickname and go to the social media, and through 3 emails, as what my younger cousins of 15, 16, 18 years old tell me. What does this mean? That the world is changing very quickly. Everything is becoming faster and faster and more complex and complicated. I heard President Romano reflecting on a very sensible reflection on the need to pass laws, something that is intangible deep down. We can't touch it. To create laws to control artificial intelligence. He is absolutely right. To try to at least to control something that otherwise, might come out of artificial intelligence and pass and lose all control. I'm one of those who, for years, has been thinking about the need of creating laws for social media. Or everything else that goes through a cell phone, because from a cell phone could spark revolts, battles, wars, crimes, etc. And, with an app, you can do everything today. But we have still not succeeded in the world. I'm talking about the Western world, about creating laws in an intelligent way to rein in social media. Those who are able to control them are countries where there's very little democratic and social media is blocked or filtered. Or the citizens of those countries are obliged to use social media that goes through filters of the various ministries of propaganda. So it's very hard. Like when I try to explain to my father what the iCloud is. He says, my father says, yes, I understand, but what does that mean? The iCloud is something that is part of all of our lives because none of us knows exactly what it is, where it is, and where our data ends up. Saverio, you said something sacrosanct, that information counts more and uses and customs and habits of a person than the vile money or the financial operation, which risks remaining there isolated. With someone's data, with their habits tied to the various algorithms. Algorithm is another very fashionable word, but I'm sure 9 people in 10 don't really know what an algorithm actually is. Why? An algorithm, data, can be used for commercial ends. And I am, a free marketer. Yes, long live the market. But they can also be used for criminal purposes, for a very sharp regime within organized crime, to organize revolts, uprisings. Through the social media, we can really do everything. You made reference to the use of the Department of Defense. I was in the Defense Committee for 5 years in the previous legislature in the Chamber of Deputies. And I was shocked when a general of the Air Force invited me to his office, very informal meeting, to show me some slides, animated, which showed how, by breaking certain balances, cybercrime, one could conduct actual wars, hybrid wars, not like once upon a time a trench war, with a musket or people shouting. No. The technical part of war, the technical, logical defense, like the exchange of fire is a minimal part of what is called a hybrid war. It's a war that starts through the internet with a small provocation that would suggest that I'd read for the 1,000 books that arrive. I try to take a peek at everything. You can't read them all, but a piccolo, Rebecca, I don't remember who wrote it, about 40-page little brochure called Russian Brigades, which is obviously a kind of transliteration, because in the history of Italy, we had the Red Brigades that were trying to destabilize the state and terrorism. But this is called Russian Brigades, and it demonstrates in a very simple manner how, by spending just a few $1 million over the course of a few years, by sponsoring posts on Facebook or using social media, public opinion of a good part of the Western Bloc has been oriented. This is something, if this is not a crime, if it cannot be blamed on organized crime, the result, however, is just as devastating because it destabilizes democratic balances and are already metabolized and have been functioning for a long time. This, not because I have it in for the Russian or to explain the obvious, but to demonstrate how much can be done through social media and through the internet in a very transparent way. Well, instead in the dark web, can you imagine what happens? You say the dark web, as if the transparent web were one world and the dark web was the universe. Can you imagine what would happen through an optical fiber? That could be the beginning of the end of the world, and which would lead us to a fifth philosophical, political thoughts that I'm very passionate about, but this is not the right place to talk about that. I'm very happy to have participated in this event, and I thank you for the ideas that I have received today. I thought it was one of the many events, all of which are very useful, but normal. But this instead is an event that is giving me ideas as the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and definitely to the Chairman Romano, who is dealing with legislation. I'd like to thank all the friends who invited me. I see that we have 3 minutes, and I will proceed with the speech. You know that at the ministry, the protocol office is a top office, so watch out if you do not dot your I's and dot your T's.
In the year of its 40th anniversary, that also the year of the Italian G7 presidency. There is no doubt we are living a new revolution. Just like nearly 30 years ago, when internet became a part of our lives, or 15 years ago, when smartphones, among other things, introduced a new way of providing and enjoying services. As we all know, every big technological changes brings risk too. New technologies can be used to improve our lives. Unfortunately, they can also facilitate things we would not want to, like organized crime. As stated by Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni last March the 12th, on the occasion of the Artificial Intelligence for Italy event, artificial intelligence is the greatest revolution of this time and also the greatest challenge we face. Organized crime has been a persistent threat throughout history. It has always excelled in adapting and evolving to take advantage of new technologies and opportunities. In the age of artificial intelligence and the internet, this challenge has only grown more complex and daunting. Indeed, changes happen at an ever quicker pace, and it's hard to organize timely reaction. As we navigate this digital landscape, we must be acutely aware of the dangers posed by organized crime and take proactive measures to combat them. One of the key challenges imposed by organized crime in this age is the ability to operate with relative anonymity and impunity. The interconnected nature of the internet allows criminal organizations to transcend the geographical boundaries and operate in a global scale. With the use of sophisticated algorithms, these groups can easily target individuals and organizations, identify vulnerabilities, and execute their malicious activities with precision. Moreover, the proliferation of encrypted communication channels and anonymous payment methods has made it increasingly difficult for law enforcement agencies to track and to apprehend these criminals. The lack of transparency and accountability in the digital space provides a fertile ground for organized crime to thrive and perpetuate their illicit activities. Against this backdrop, what should we do? First of all, enhance international cooperation. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Relations is at the forefront in strengthening international collaboration on the topic. In an ever closely interconnected world, the security of one is the security of all. We intend to use every tool at our disposal to make this happen. As you know, this year Italy holds the G7 presidency. In this context, Italy is extensively addressing the challenge posed by artificial intelligence and has made it one of the priorities of its presidency. As our Prime Minister said, it is necessary to develop governance mechanisms and ensure that AI remains human-centered and human-controlled, giving concrete application to the concept of the algor ethics. As the involvement of key stakeholders always appears to be a winning strategy, it is imperative that we adopt a multifaceted approach that combines technological innovation, law enforcement collaboration, and public awareness. Investing in advanced AI technologies to bolster cybersecurity defenses, enhancing international cooperation to combat transnational crime networks, and educating the public on safe line practices are essential steps in mitigating the threat posed by organized crime. It's also very important to involve private ECT companies in helping us addressing this challenge. While doing this, I believe it also essential that we keep a whole of government approach, combining knowledge and competences from different branches in the public administration. Similarly, we should bear in mind how important it is to work together to assist developing countries in coping with the challenges posed by new technologies such as AI. There is a commitment that we have all affirmed with the recently adopted UNGA resolution about safe, secure, and trustworthy AI system for sustainable development. While countering transnational organized crime, we need to take advantage of the legal tools we already put in place to carry on this fight. I am always very proud to mention the United Nations Palermo Convention against transnational organized crime and its protocols. Thanks to the sacrifice of the Italian judges Falcone and Borsellino, Italy engaged in extensive war against organized crime since the late 90s, and Falcone himself took part to the first round to negotiate this convention. He was among the first one to understand that you have to follow the money if you want to fight international crime by crashing down on its financing. Follow the money. It was done in the year 2000 and entered into force in 2003. 20 years have passed, but it is an invaluable international legal tool against transnational organized crime. Most of the articles that Italy and the European Union are promoting in the ongoing negotiation to adopt a Union Nation Convention on countering the use of information and communication technology for criminal purposes are taken from this convention. They are meant to broaden the cooperation already in place according to the Budapest Convention. Gli ultimi 20 secondi. Sharing best practices, identifying a common threat, create long-term cooperative approaches and common understandings are also the core of the International Counter-Ransomware Initiative, a US-led initiative which Italy is proudly part of together with many other countries. Ransomware crimes are increasingly aggressive and dangerous, hence a coordinated approach is necessary to condemn and combat such a measure of cyberspace. In conclusion, the challenge imposed by organized crime in the age of artificial intelligence and internet requires a collective and concerted effort to address. By staying vigilant, informed, and proactive, we can safeguard our digital ecosystem and protect ourselves for the nefarious activities of criminal organizations. It is important to make a joint effort to build trust in the digital ecosystem, as agreed in the Declaration for the Future of the Internet, launched by the European Union and its member states in 2022. Together, we can turn the tide against organized crime and ensure a safer and more secure digital future for all, leaving no one behind. Grazie.
Segretario, a questo punto abbiamo pochi minuti, abbiamo sforato un po' all'inizio, ma abbiamo...
Thank you very much. We just have a few minutes now because we took too much time in this first part. We just have 2 minutes, really, and I can take a question from the audience if there's any question. Is there any question? Yes, there is one question from Stefano Baccara. Microfono, per favore, non si sente, non si può tradurre. Non si può tradurre perché... Sorry, the microphone is off, so the interpreting cannot be performed. I am a journalist from La Voce di New York, Dal Press. I have listened to everything. It was very interesting. We needed it, as we say in Italian. Can you hear it in English? Yeah. Okay, so I can speak Italian. Okay, great. The only aspect when we talk about mafia, which may or may not have been mentioned, is that I've always learned, and I'm a Sicilian, that you can talk about the mafias when there is a relationship with institutions. If it is organized crime, which does prostitution and gambling and all of that, that is organized crime. But if we use the word mafia or mafias, that means that in all of their dirty business, there's also the issue that these mafias can establish relationships with the institutions. So my question for the panel is, with AI, will this kind of connection, which was there in the past, well, is it made easier or not? We can give the word to the prosecutor. I don't agree with this statement. Mafia exists when it interacts with the people, with public opinion, with the citizens, but it doesn't necessarily need to interact with politics or with power. Unfortunately, in this kind of forum, we only have a few minutes, but the premise was that there are different levels of mafias. For example, asking for protection money in a systematic way in different streets, that's mafia. It's a structure that has affiliation rituals. Within the organization, there are different roles and functions. And you can imagine a mafia-like organization at a local level. For elections, maybe they can collect 50 votes, but you were describing an interaction, for example, in terms of public contracts or in terms of tenders or in terms of money laundering in a sophisticated way. Well, the organized crime that we were talking today, we were talking about the elites of the mafias. We were talking about the new frontiers of the present and the future, but they're still there. And there are also local organizations that may or may not have enough power to have an impact on the political agenda. I just wanted to conclude this session with a summary, and then I will give the word to President Foti. Please correct me. So Cosa Nostra in America could disappear if it's stuck to old systems, and we want to highlight the excellent work done by the FBI. The Italian mafias were connected with the digital worlds. They were able to evolve. They were able to use hackers to move capitals from home. Mafias act in the digital sphere in a strategic way. The report that was presented includes risk indexes to assess the vulnerability level of companies, corporations, and institutions, which are very lucrative for organized crime. Speed of reaction must be the same as the speed of organized crime. Otherwise, we will never get anywhere. So what can be done? We can hire people that are highly skilled at IT level. The new frontier is also big data, as the professor was saying. And so the fight against organized crime must be at the forefront for every country, and definitely in Italy. And to sum it all up in a word, there's still a lot to be done. We need to run. And as Professor Nicaso was saying, we should not be afraid of technology, but we must harness it to tackle new challenges. Is this okay? Okay, President, I'll give you the floor for your closing remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fabrizio Forlani, Deputy Director of RAI, the Italian television, who wanted to monitor and follow this event in the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the creation of the Magna Grecia Foundation, which, of course, doesn't look at the past. And I'm talking about the 2,500 years ago when the Greeks settled in southern Italy. We look at it in an intelligent way to draw on this legacy. In this country, the U.S., our host country, we can demonstrate that our immigrants at the turn of the century became a fabric of U.S. society to the point that they contribute to creating this society. So the report was presented, and we had another meeting with Professor Nicaso and the prosecutor as well, and we promised we would follow up on that because that first report was very successful because some of the investigators were not familiar with some of the issues that were described in the report in terms of the algorithm, and these platforms allowed to do some interceptions that were very helpful for ongoing investigations. So this second report is on cybercrime, and it's already an evolution also at social level. We were talking about investing on social capital and investing on human capital as a foundation that is part of our founding principles. So education and cultural components. That means that by leveraging culture, when other people try to approach us, and there can be many areas where this is not strong enough. Well, we need to work on that so that we can train people and we can educate our young generations so that they can be able to defend themselves, but they can also harness it in a constructive way. And we need professionals. We need engineers. We need this kind of job description. So our report says that we need to look at the future. We need to remember the past, but build on that so that we can promote new growth. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank this wonderful audience. We can stay here a few minutes longer and talk to each other informally. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.